So, welcome everyone to our first joint broadcast between Democrats Abroad and the DECF with Dana Freling and John Capece. They are live at COP29, which is being held in Baku, Azerbaijan. And tell us, Dana, what have you been doing today?
It's been a busy day and it's been a busy week here in Baku. The big question on everybody's mind coming from all over the world is the elephant in the room. Everybody is terrified. What is going to happen with this rather unexpected victory with the Republican Party? And how is it going to affect our energy transition in the United States? And how is that going to fit into the global climate agenda?
Wow.
I have heard some encouraging news. John, you're on the ground here. Have you?
Oh, John is.
I haven't had a chance to hear that much from other
John, you're breaking
people about their concerns.
Okay, we can't hear you, John, if you can hear us.
We have some limited bandwidth here, so I may end up as an observer.
Yeah, okay. All right. Dana, so tell us what you've seen. Tell us what's going on.
So I've heard some interesting, there's so much to see as people who have attended these conferences. There are negotiations going on. There are all kinds of civil societies and, of course, delegations from countries from around the world. And I have been trying to follow a lot of the US delegation and officials coming from the White House and state and local officials coming from the United States to get their take on what's happening on the ground and how we may push through the next couple of years. This has been encouraging for me. The message is we are not going back. The message is that with the Inflation Reduction Act, with the bipartisan infrastructure bill, CHIPS Act, much of that money has been invested and it has generated so many new jobs, 400,000 new jobs. It has brought income and economic prosperity to the red states. There is so much momentum at the local level that it is a train that cannot be stopped. That we are on our way to an energy transition, that so much money through Justice 40, through the Biden initiative, has gone to marginalized communities, that this work is affecting the constituents of red states, those who would be voting their congressional representatives out of office. And there's an alliance of governors, there's an alliance of mayors that have band together for climate action. So no matter what they're going to do at the federal level, it is a movement and a momentum which is unstoppable. And that is gratifying. That is,
well,
I'm relieved. It was, as we all know, the last week, a week and a half since the results of the election, we have been traumatized, terrified. It's not just reproductive rights. It's not just, what's going to happen to our democracy, but we have basically 5 years to get control of our climate emissions without putting our planet at severe risk.
Wow.
If there's, any chance of reaching or staying within 1.5 degrees of
Um,
industrial levels. Yes?
I just want to let you know that we are live now on Facebook, and I want to welcome our viewers. Thank you for joining us today. We are coming live from COP29, which is being held in Baku, Azerbaijan, and it'll be going on. It's been from the 11th of November till the 22nd of November this year. And yeah, Dana and John are here to give us some insights about what's happening. You sent me a picture the other day of one of the guests that we had in our climate action. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So that was Colette Pichon Battle, and she is quite an extraordinary activist that we invited about 3 years ago for our climate rally. She runs the Southwest Legal Justice Center. I don't remember the exact name. And
Yeah.
she's really fighting for the rights of marginalized communities in the Gulf states. Quite a force. I
Yeah.
think you remember. And we sat together in one of the sessions, and she asked some important pointed questions about how the Gulf states and the wells were abandoned wells were leaking into communities there. And we were in a session with Ali Zaidi, who is the deputy climate advisor for President Biden. And he listened to her and he said, oh, you know, they have done so much with the Biden administration. We can be so proud of what the administration has done, all the efforts, however imperfect. And Ali Zaidi has been really behind much of this push. When he heard Colette and began exploring with her who was speaking from the audience with a question, he was concerned. He got together with her afterwards, and with only 2 months left in office, he promised to try to address these issues. There are orphaned wells that are polluting these marginalized communities.
Yeah, that was definitely something that we've talked about before, these orphan wells and how they need to be capped and taken care of so that they don't harm the people that live there, but they also don't harm the environment anymore. I know you've met with a few interesting people. You met with Jay Inslee.
I met with Governor Jay Inslee, who has been spearheaded the governor's alliance for climate action within Washington state. He has done really flagship work and created an alliance. I think there are 23 governors now in the United States that have take part, Democratic governors, in this climate alliance. It went from 13 to 23, and they know, the governors know, the mayors know. There's a large network of Democratic mayors of major cities, small cities. They know that they have to take up the slack that is going to be left by the federal government with, as we can expect, the cutback from the new administration. We don't know yet exactly what it's going to mean. We do know, however, that in Project 2025, they have promised to begin to dismantle the NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Agency, and the FDA, the federal, the FDA, vital energy agencies which oversee our lands, waters, and air. And as we have also heard, Musk is being tasked with the privilege of downsizing our government. He's some say that he might cut the federal workforce by 1/2. It's terrifying.
Well, yeah, it is terrifying, especially there's a lot of these agencies that we really need, and NOAA does a lot more than just climate science. They are also the ones that inform us when there's a hurricane coming or a bad storm or something else that we should look at. And there is actually a hurricane headed for Florida right now. Hurricane season does go till November, but normally you don't have too many hurricanes in November. So this is going to be very challenging for us all. You also met Jennifer Granholm also, didn't you, while you were
So
there?
I met Jennifer Granholm today and heard her speak several times. What a powerhouse. She was so inspiring and helped us understand by laying out what the success and trajectory of the strategy of the Energy Department is, how it has created jobs, how this is an unstoppable force. Of course, everybody was devastated by these election results, but they feel confident that their work will go on. The infrastructure bill was bipartisan, so much of that which is necessary for our energy transition. And it affects red states, all the factories that have been created, all the industry that's being created in the red states. Helps us, guarantee that where there's money, where there are jobs, where there's prosperity for the constituents, this cannot be rolled back. You have Republicans who have sent messages to the new government that have said, please do not roll back the Inflation Reduction Act. It is benefiting my state, or it is benefiting my city.
Well, that's really great that they're so gung-ho about it now. They weren't gung-ho about it when it was up for
No, they weren't. They weren't. I think I have shared with you a video that I shot less than an hour ago, maybe 45 minutes ago, with Jennifer Granholm, the Secretary of Energy.
Well, let's take a look.
This movement, it would be political malpractice to undo the Inflation Reduction Act. Today's the 3rd year anniversary, by the way, of the bipartisan infrastructure law. 3rd year anniversary. But all of those investments, 81% are going to communities, to districts, to counties that have lower than average weekly wages. 86% are going to communities with below average college graduation rates. A lot of those are in rural America. I'm just telling you, this is why there's bipartisan support for the Inflation Reduction Act. A recent poll said 70% of Americans support the Inflation Reduction Act. A majority of Republicans support the Inflation Reduction Act. We've got 18 members of Congress who are Republicans who signed a letter saying you cannot repeal the provisions of the Inflation Reduction Act. And by the way, what is this all about but an industrial strategy that allows America to reshore manufacturing, to be able to build these products that are in demand globally, make them in America, using American workers, stamped made in America, use them here and export them elsewhere. Why would we want to cede that territory again? We're just now reshoring and getting the ability to build critical minerals for the supply chain, for the batteries, for the electric vehicle. Do we want to give that away? A nation that does not manufacture anything, a nation that does not have a supply chain is a weak nation. We have to send the message that this Inflation Reduction Act is critical to our national security, our energy security, and certainly to jobs across the country. 400,000 jobs so far have been created so far because of the Inflation Reduction Act and bipartisan infrastructure. So I'm confident that this will remain because of those facts. The second reason why is because so many of the technologies have bipartisan support, like nuclear, advanced nuclear, bipartisan support for carbon management technologies, bipartisan support for enhanced geothermal, bipartisan support for hydroelectric power, bipartisan support for enhancing the grid. these technologies with bipartisan support, and the bipartisan support there is to invest in the research and development to bring these technologies to life, that is real. And that has been the history, and we hope with members of Congress who represent these districts, it will be the future. And then the third reason why I'm confident.
Okay, well, she was very confident about our ability to continue to make progress, and I hope that she is correct, because as you've stated, we don't have a lot more time left to get a handle on this situation and yeah, change our how we're producing energy for sure. Was there anyone else you spoke with in the past day or so?
So I also met with and attended sessions with liaison for FEMA and for NOAA this morning, followed by a liaison with the Department of Defense overseeing Arctic security. And all three of these women, they were all women, had unified messages. Of course, FEMA is on the ground. I'm not sure that the Trump administration is going to cut funds for FEMA because the communities, the citizens, we depend on these services. There will be a huge backlash if those are cut, but he has promised to try to dismantle NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Organization. But this woman was hopeful that the support would continue, that it is vital, that they do need information about weather. They do need these kinds of satellite informations that govern our oceans and our air and our weather. The
Yes.
the Department of Defense, they're not going to play around with that. They're not going to cut funding for the Department of Defense, and they have an entire sector in the Department of Defense that oversees the climate risks.
That is correct.
For the military.
Yes, the Department of Defense is in a certain way much further along in their planning and actions against climate change than the rest of the government. They continued to work on this even during the Bush administration. So they're there because you can't defend America if you don't know what's going on with the climate and you're not prepared to do the things that are needed to take care of it. John, are you there? Can you talk? John Capece is he's also here, but he's got kind of a bad internet connection, so we'll come back to him in a bit. What else is happening, Dana? What's it like there? What's Baku like?
What is Baku like?
Yeah.
I haven't seen a lot of Baku because I've been inside the conference hall, but it's a Central Asian country that is largely secular, but it is a Muslim region. It is a petrol state. The country was the first region in the world to begin producing oil. It is famous for that. And it is geographically flanked on one side by Iran, on another side by Russia. So it's being at any COP, is always interesting. It's like being in the Tower of Babel. You have delegations from most countries in the world, very large Chinese delegation here doing with an impressive pavilion, ongoing programming. China, though they are the #1 emitter in the world, they are also the #1 producer of renewable energy products. We need to work in concert with China if we are going to solve this global problem. And if the US steps back on a federal level, it will be China that dominates.
Yes. Yes, that is true. Let's go to some pictures and sites from Baku. And this is from our correspondent who the last time we did these broadcasts, and Michael, oh, I'm sorry, I don't remember his last name. I'm so sorry.
Fidler.
Michal Fidler. That's right.
Very talented.
We've got a couple of videos from him, so we'll take a moment to share with you, and I hope you enjoy his pictures.
Thank you.
And I will show the audience about 20, 30 photos that I took, not just at this COP, but I took in previous 9 COPs. This is my COP number 9. So I don't want to say that it's a routine for me, but because every single COP is somehow different. This would be an image of the main entrance to COP29 in Baku. It's a huge event. When I came to my first COP, I was impressed by the size because, as Rok mentioned, there is a very different number of people coming to each COP. It can be something between 20 to 90,000 people every year. Last year in Dubai, there was about 90,000 people. I want to show you some things that I have seen in the past COPs and what remains the same and what's new. In Baku, what impressed me is the number of volunteers at this COP. There are not tens, there are hundreds, maybe even thousands of young people, students, most of them speaking very good English and very, very helpful, showing you how to get here, how to get there. Every time I don't know where to go, I'll just ask one of the volunteers and they know. That's very, very impressive. And once these volunteers navigate you somewhere, you usually walk through corridors that look like this, and they are full of people. And let me tell you, the people are from all over the world. I mean, literally from every corner of this world, there is somebody here. Let me show you some of the images, how the rooms where COP takes place, how they look like. This is an example of a typical meeting room, or they call it MR. It's a space where there is a few people sitting in the front and just organizing this specific event. And it might sound a little rude, but when I'm tired and just super busy and I just need to sit down and relax a bit, I go to one of these meeting rooms because about 15 minutes, and during those 15 minutes they were asked 3 questions and no response was delivered. So that's a little strange. Where some action takes place are these informational booths, because you can walk through the corridors and there are these informational booths, and there are tens of them, often full of young people, full of energy and eager to share their knowledge or their research. There are also these screens everywhere that help you to get around. And as you can see on the right-hand side, some of the meetings are closed. It's either high-level officials meetings or it's sort of behind-the-door negotiation. So no matter where you want to go, you cannot get to all of the rooms. Sometimes it's simply not open for the regular observers as we are here. Now, this would be an example of one of the corridors in front of the plenaries, and that's probably the images you can see on TV when the politicians or high officials come out of the plenaries and they just and are asked by the media what was discussed, what happened. And sometimes it gets pretty tense. So you can see in the left bottom corner there is also the UN security, and often there is a lot of security because the UN security guy was, kind of shouting today, everybody calm down, we need to have some order here. Because today, as Rok mentioned, there was the World Leaders Summit. Sometimes you simply cannot get to one of these rooms where these high officials are. So at that point, it's either watch it virtually or simply walk around and find a screen where you can watch some of the presentations there. So on the left-hand side, you can see the Secretary General Guterres delivering his speech earlier today. Now, if you have a lot of patience and you just wait in front of the plenaries, then you get a chance to meet various politicians you probably would have no chance in your life to meet. So in this case, this is one of the highest officials of Sudan. If you just wait another 3, 4, 5 minutes, this would be the president of Serbia. And I could just show you more images of various presidents and prime ministers who were around today. I took this image last night because after several years, also the highest officials of Afghanistan came to COP. So these gentlemen are really one of the leaders of Taliban, and they were invited to this COP. So truly international events and raising various questions because it doesn't happen every day that you meet people from these countries. Now, you can also get to the plenaries at some point once the World Leaders Summit will be over. It should not be such an issue to get to the plenaries. So here are just some images from the plenaries, and this is actually the stage where the presidents and prime ministers were standing earlier today and delivering their speeches to the whole world. This image just should give you the perspective of or the size of the one of the plenaries. It's really huge. It's simply impressive, and I always get impressed by all the technical background that is there. This would be the plenaries, but for observers like us, most of the action happens in the various pavilions. This year there is over 150 various pavilions, national pavilions, various NGOs, and various other organizations having their pavilions there, and it's very interesting to walk through these pavilions because this would be, say, this is a pavilion of Singapore. It's very colorful. There is a lot of program going on. This would be an image from the Turkish pavilion. There is so much going on. You can just stay within few of the pavilions all day, and there is always something happening. This would be the pavilion of Ukraine. This would be the always full pavilion of South Korea. Sometimes some of the pavilions are also, I wouldn't say boring, but this is the presentation of the Ethiopian pavilion today. I watched the presentation. It has exactly one slide of PowerPoint, and it's the national flag. And that was it. I walked around a few times, and it simply didn't change. So some of the countries might be treating this COP also as a free vacation. It's hard to tell, but it's not everything that everybody would be just 100% focused on their work. Now, in contrary, I always go to the Japanese pavilion because it's my favorite. That is always high tech, and the Japanese are simply very focused. And if you have any technical questions to whatever these people do, they give you very precise responses. Obviously, there is also the pavilion of the United States. I walked there a few times. These images are from yesterday, and it was very empty. I was surprised how empty it was, but it was just the first day of COP. So maybe that's the reason. When I walked there earlier today, there was some program already going on. And one more thing about the pavilions, this is the Chinese pavilions, and I'm surprised how much bigger this pavilion gets. When I compare it to the Chinese pavilions from the previous years, sometimes there were none, sometimes they were very small, maybe 5 times by 5 meters, but this year it's huge. It's one of the largest pavilions I have seen. And just to, if we leave the pavilions, we can end up also in the press conference rooms. Sometimes it's a huge room and there are only 4 or 5 journalists. Sometimes it's really busy. I just stopped at this press conference, and the activists or this NGO was delivering their presentation, or they were delivering press conference about about so-called Troika. That's what they call the Brazil, United Arab Emirates, and Azerbaijan, the country that hosted last COP, that hosts this COP, and that will host the next COP. And they were arguing that these countries are actually oil-rich, and these shouldn't be the countries that are hosting conferences that should actually decrease the carbon emissions. Now, this is the president of last COP, Sultan Al Jaber, in United Arab Emirates, and this would be an image of the current Azerbaijani president. Again, these are really super oil-rich countries. They produce so much oil, and both of these gentlemen are also vice presidents or presidents of the largest state companies producing oil. So obviously there is some conflict of interest. So it's very interesting to watch how these gentlemen basically play on both sides. This is not my first visit to Azerbaijan. I visited Azerbaijan also before a few years ago, and I just want to give you a sense how the country that produces so much oil can look like. It's not really as nice, as green as it's being presented. So these are just images where the oil in Azerbaijan was produced, and that's how the land look like after some of the production. Now, this would be the last image of the day. Because I also went to one of the plenaries where John Podesta, the special advisor for international climate policy of US, was delivering some speech today. And I think it's very important what role will the US play in the future negotiations.
So those were some very interesting images. It looks like a giant pavilion.
It is a giant conference area, but it is about a third or a fourth the size of what it was in Dubai last year. As well, the attendance was up to 85,000 people in Dubai last year, and I understand that there are less than 30,000 this year. I don't know what the final numbers will be, but it is considerably smaller, and geographically, it's much easier to get from pavilion to pavilion. And from in Dubai, it was at this World Fairground, and each country had its own little building. Each lecture hall or session hall was its own building, and they were spread out, amongst kilometers. Was beautiful but overwhelming. So this is more approachable, still exhausting, but more approachable. I have to make one correction. Michal took these photographs, I believe, on Monday, and the official opening of the US Center was on Tuesday, and it has been packed with program from 9 a.m. until 5:30 every day. So the empty chairs was just getting prepared.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's good to know. Let's just check in with John.
He seems to be back.
Yes. John, are you there? Or he's not.
He's not.
Yeah, well, let me just say for sure. John, are you there? If you're speaking, I can't hear you. That climate change is really the biggest issue that the world has. And that we really need to continue to move forward with our transition to a less carbon usage, for sure. What else is going on, Dana? What else have you seen?
It reminded me that I did see John Podesta speak several times he has left now. He is the climate envoy for the United States, and he gave some inspiring speeches, and I want to quote him. if I can find the quote, just to encourage us all, because everybody keeps asking, that's what everybody keeps asking, how are the elections going to affect us? And I can't find the quote offhand, but he said, giving up basically is unimaginable. We must continue the fight no matter what, because this fight cannot wait. I'm paraphrasing him. This fight cannot wait, and we are all in it together, all around the world. And though we have lost the power at the federal level, we still have the power of the people. We still have the power in the communities, in the cities, in the states, all over the world, and in the United States. And the momentum is on our side, but time is not.
Yes.
So tomorrow we will take this up again. I hope we'll have John on because he's very good with technical issues to discuss the methane pledge, to discuss nuclear energy and other initiatives that are going on. But what I want to leave the audience with this first live stream from the ground in COP is we are not giving up and we are not going back.
Yes, you definitely cannot give up. And everyone, all Americans, all people around the world need to stand up for climate change because every day there's another climate incident. Hi, John, you're upside down. And we also cannot hear you. So, but good to see you. Yeah, we all have to stand up for climate change because every day there's something new. Every day. I just saw the other day that it snowed in Saudi Arabia in the desert. There was a
And
huge,
we had a hurricane in Finland. We had hurricane force winds in Finland, which has never happened.
yes, that's right. And all the things that are happening in Spain, it was in Valencia, and now I can't remember the other, I think it's Malaga that had just
Malaga.
had a giant flood that just recently. We have a hurricane hurtling towards Florida in the middle of November. Things are changing for sure. And we have to hurry up and make our changes. So please, wherever you are, be sure to let your government know that climate change is an issue that you need them to be concerned about, and that you need to be concerned about also. I thought we were going to get a chance to speak with John, but we will close out.
And tune in tomorrow. And I think
Yes.
John will have better connectivity.
Yes, we will close out with one more set of pictures from Michael. The first set was from the day before, and I believe this is from today. He's always got an eye onto everything, and we'll watch this video shortly and then come back and say goodbye.
And it's not really taken at COP, it's taken on the way to COP. I needed to buy a new SIM card this morning because I want to be online all the time. And let me tell you that just to buy a SIM card in Azerbaijan is not so simple. It took these 3 people to sell me the SIM card. It took about 25 minutes to arrange it. And maybe it's because also this girl was eating pickles all the time while she was selling me the SIM card. And after that, she drank a half liter of Coke, and then she needed another 5 minutes just to stay somewhere else before we were able to finish the business. So I was a little bit late for COP, but it's not really my fault. It just took a while to get a SIM card. And another delay was there are these tourniquets in the metro, In order to get on the metro, we have to walk through them. We wear these COP badges, so we have a free access to metro. But for some reason, the tourniquet that is for the COP participants was broken as well. So I spent another maybe 10 minutes just waiting here before I was able to get through. Although there were three another empty, open and empty tourniquets, they insisted that I walk through the one which was broken. So another delay. But then as soon as I got a little closer to COP, I just got on this shuttle bus, and then it was all nice and smooth, and I got there pretty quickly. COP feels very safe because every 50 meters or so there is either a police officer or some soldiers who are just patrolling the premises all the time, so it feels very safe. And also it feels kind of empty. Yesterday I heard in the Azerbaijani president's speech that there are about 72,000 registered participants for this COP. But somehow I think the number is not right, because if you look at the main entrance, this image is taken today, it's just empty. It's very empty. Another thing which might be quite empty here at COP are the various protests. We have seen huge protests in Glasgow and in Madrid, and this is so far the only protest I have seen here in Baku. This is a group of people who promote being a vegetarian. When they saw that I was taking images of them, they obviously approached me because I was one of the very few people who showed some interest in them. And when I told them that my girlfriend forces me to be a vegetarian, suddenly I became their hero, and they wanted to have images with me. So I am the guy in the middle of this image. And yes, now I look like a activist for being a vegetarian. So this is what it is now. Then I finally made it to COP, and we have seen these gentlemen on the right few times already. These are the Afghans. They are they are members of Taliban, and somehow they always attract my attention. So I kind of follow them, just wanted to see where they go, what do they do. Here they were approached by a Bangladeshi gentleman who mistakenly considered them being Pakistani. So he wanted to discuss some business, but it did not really happen. They just had a few phrases, and then he left. And the Afghans then sat down, and I just couldn't resist. So I also sat down with them. I listened to them, but they spoke Farsi, and I understand only very few words, so I cannot really tell what they talked about. But I looked over my shoulder, and they were very active on Facebook. So I can report that Taliban uses Facebook as well. Now, this was enough, and I decided to go to the plenaries because today was the second day of the World Leaders Summit. But my understanding was that today they are sort of the leaders of the countries from the second or even third level, because there were prime ministers and presidents from Bermuda and Antigua and Nauru and these small countries. But I still wanted to get in there. Yesterday, it was not possible to get to the plenary without a special ticket. Today, it was no problem. I just had to wait in a queue for maybe 5-10 minutes, and then I was able to get in. And you could see how full the plenary was yesterday, and today it was much emptier. If you want to get good photos, I just always follow the photographers with the huge cameras and huge lenses, and then those are the spots where you get the best shots. So this would be one of the spots where the professional photographers stand and take the images you can see in the news. I made it in, and here is a practical recommendation. Don't drink 3 cups of coffee before entering plenary that has no bathroom. It's tough to be there, especially when I just finally got in. They said, oh, we are taking 15 minutes break. But I really didn't want to leave because then I was not sure I would be able to get in. I stayed there because I asked the organizers who is going to deliver other speeches. And I was told that it would be 3 other countries. It would be Korea, Russia, and United States. So while waiting, I just walked around a bit, took few images. I wanted to see the Czech Prime Minister who was delivering his speech today, but I came too late, so I will have to watch it on YouTube. And actually, you can probably watch all the speeches if you want to on YouTube. And then the meeting started again, and Korea delivered their opening statement, and you can see how empty the plenary was. I would say maybe 70% of the plenary was just empty. Another image of really very, very empty space. It's maybe because many of the speeches are very similar in context. You just listen to 2 or 3 of them, and then you get an idea. And listening to it 180 plus times, it might be a little boring for the participants. So they just left. And now somehow I was surprised that during the second day, aka the countries of lower level, was included the United States. So he was the opening statement by John Podesta, the special envoy for climate, and you can read it on, I think it's on the White House website, that there is the transcript of his opening statement. So what I found quite interesting is that as soon as John Podesta finished his speech, he just walked between the people, and they were able to take selfies with him. It was very relaxed. So here is another chance to take a selfie, and yet another selfie. And if I wanted to have a selfie with him, it would not be a problem. Then, in a very sheer contrast, came the Russian delegation, and there was maybe 20 security guys walking with the Russian participant, with the Prime Minister of Russia, Mikhail Mishustin. So it was a really very, very sheer contrast, comparing the relaxed atmosphere with Podesta, and then the tense with the Russian Prime Minister. So here is an image of the Russian Prime Minister delivering his speech. He mentioned Putin several times, but he had a very, very short statement. I took this image just to show you few of the. It's only 1/3 of all the guards who came with Mishustin, with the prime minister. There were really 20 to 30 guards with him all the time, and as soon as he finished, they immediately left the room. There was also the Russian TV, and it's forbidden to do any interviews in the plenary. But the Russians, this was the channel 1, the Russia 1 TV, and they simply ignored it, and they started to, they just found a Chinese participant. They asked him a few questions in Russian. He spoke Russian, so they started to shoot their interview there. Of course, the UN security guy came, and he was kind of telling them and showing them, hey, you cannot do it here. But they just ignore it, and they shot the interview. So I learned the lesson. It's not so necessary to follow the UN rules all the time. Maybe because if you are a Russian, maybe you don't have to follow the rules. Then the session of the opening statements was over, so I just walked to the other plenary, and there was a very similar session. It was the Leaders Summit of the small islands or developing states, and there were again some prime ministers from these small islands like Solomon Islands and Cook Islands and so on, and they were delivering similar speeches what I just heard in the other room. So I did not find it very entertaining, and then just went elsewhere. I went to one of the meeting rooms where I met Ali Zaidi, the National Climate Advisor, and it was much more interesting. But what I found even more interesting was the session that just followed this one. I found a very, I would say, unusual crowd of people on the panel. Because on the right-hand side, that's a mayor of Kuala Lumpur, the capital of Malaysia. The gentleman next to the lady, I think he's a mayor of Albuquerque, New Mexico. And then the next gentleman is Jan Inslee, the governor of the Washington state. And they were again discussing the issues, the usual issues. And what struck me was that some of them were sort of for the up to bottom approach, while the others were from the bottom to up approach. So I could not really tell what would be the recommendable solution. I listened to Jay Inslee, to the Washington governor, and he basically said that the results of the recent election is just a minor bump, and it will be fixed. So he was very positive. It sounded that that's just a minor setback, and don't worry, the US will work it out. So let's see how that works out. It might be also a lesson for Iraq, because as soon as we finished this session, we went with Rock and met another member of our team, Dana Freling, who's on the left, and they discussed the political outcome. So Rock, my recommendation is learn from the governor. It's just a minor setback. Don't be sad about the election results. It will work out fine. Just believe in that. After spending time in these plenaries and meeting rooms, I walked to the pavilions and I realized there is also the Russian pavilion. So for the first time, I went to the Russian pavilion, which has these huge, the Russian dolls called, I just can't remember the words right now. Matryoshkas. So this is how you can find recognize the Russian pavilion. I could not help. I had to take this image because you can see it in the front, all the wheat or the corn. And somehow I felt immediately came to my mind, oh, that's the wheat you stole from Ukraine, because the Russians stole hundreds of millions of tons of wheat. So the whole pavilion has this wheat all around. I just could not help it. That was my first thought when I saw that. One more thing that was quite interesting in the Russian pavilion is that there were the instructions or the setup, what meeting will take what time, and it was only in Russian. I could not find any translation in English. I don't know whether it's really closed or there is not much international interest, but it was all in Russian only. It was kind of depressing, so I decided to leave and went to the Indonesian pavilions. It was much more cheerful. There were these girls doing some traditional dances, and it was very relaxed and it improved my mood. And finally, I ended up in the Uzbek pavilion. It looks like sort of like this chaikona, or you would call it the tea house in Uzbekistan, and it was very relaxed. I got a cup of tea there, and finally could relax because it was a very, very active day today. And this would be the last image of the day when we were leaving the COP. It was the first time I did not go out after dark. So this is just the last image of the day. And I would say it was an interesting, very interesting day at COP once again.
No. John, you're there.
I'm here. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you for sure.
Oh, good.
Can you tell us about your time here in Baku at the COP? What's happened?
Well, I got here in a sort of roundabout way because the election kept all of us so incredibly busy. I wasn't even sure that I'd be able to come and what arrangements I would make. So having bought my ticket at the last minute, I wound up routing myself through Tashkent and spending a day there. But I had a professor friend there who came and spent the day with me, so that was actually quite nice. Eventually got here, and yesterday I spent some time walking around the neighborhood. We're in a private apartment that we've rented sort of in the working class neighborhood, so we get a direct exposure to the everyday life of the Uzbeks, I mean the Azerbaijanis, and it struck me that it's extremely similar to what I experienced back in 1992 when I visited Russia and Georgia and Crimea. Not much has changed. You'll see they've got a few skyscrapers and they've got lots of electronics now, but they still have, most people live in old Soviet tenement apartments, and they're not unreasonable. They're perfectly satisfactory housing, but these folks are surviving off an average income of about $400 per month. And that's challenging anywhere. Prices are cheap here relative to food and whatnot, but anything else you buy, electronics or consumer goods, there's an international price on that. So these folks have some priorities, and that, I think, translates into each of the pavilions. I had a sense that first, as Dana pointed out, this is so much better as far as proximity and ability to go from one pavilion, national pavilion, to another, and the other various NGO pavilions and research organizations, because it's all in one tight facility, unlike it was in Dubai. So it's very easy to get around. But the pavilions, I had a sense that a lot of the nations are bringing to this event, yes, concerns about climate change and the need to address it, but they're bringing their traditional economic and political objectives, and those tend to dominate a lot of their activities, as I imagine it will in ours if we have a national pavilion next year. So it's hard to discern what's being said as far as whether it's simply serving national priorities versus the climate objectives. Now, Dana had also talked about the Department of Defense. And for the past couple of years, I'd had an opportunity to spend some time in the Pentagon dealing with some of the energy experts, the colonels that represent the various military units, the Air Force and Army and Navy. And these people are extremely knowledgeable. They're probably the most knowledgeable people I've encountered. And I don't mean just technically. They have an excellent social sense of what's going on in the nation, in the world socially, and what human aspects are necessary to address the climate crisis. So they are focusing to a large extent on the small modular reactor program. And that program has within the UN COP process has been growing as a presence year to year and is now, quite prominent. So I would think that we're going to see a fairly steady progress within the Department of Defense, which drives much of our national R&D on all fronts. Because it represents not just a climate solution, but a national security solution, I think that those programs will advance quite well. And hopefully that will mean that technology overall will also progress well. As far as the other programs in the US portfolio, I would guess that the Trump administration will seek to keep anything going that generates economic activity and will therefore enhance their opportunities for re-election. However, whether or not they will go the extra mile and work towards actual solutions is uncertain. The economic activities are one way of keeping the population on board with the movement on the climate front, but they are not necessarily the current solutions. They're a step in the right directions to the solutions, but they're not nearly sufficient. So let's hope that the programs that are continued are not just the economic activity ones, but the technology and research and development, not just in the military, but in all disciplines within our nation.
Wow, let's hope that.
I think.
Yeah, we should probably close out, but I'm super glad that we were able to get John in here to give his perspective.
And we'll hear more from him tomorrow. And he
Yes.
always has a very interesting technological engineering perspective, which is highly, highly appreciated.
Well, I'm very pleased that we've gotten together again this year, that we were all able to make it here and come together for these briefings. And we'll do a few more. We'll do as many as we can and try to keep everyone informed. I'm looking forward to additional conversations, not just with us, but bringing in the audience in our next episode, so we can talk about the climate elements of the election, not just the election we've been through, but the one coming up again, because there's going to have to be a reassessment of democratic approaches, our branding, and our priorities are issue that we emphasize to the American people. And I think we need to have a conversation about what role climate will play in that. And as painful as this defeat has been, we must use it as an opportunity to restructure and plan for 2026.
Amen. Thank
Yes.
you. Yes.
Yes. So thank you everyone for watching, and for the Democratic Environmental Caucus of Florida and the Democrats Abroad Environmental Climate Crisis Council. I want to thank everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care, everyone.
Bye.